I'm Jim Bergeron, pastor at Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas. And this is a sermon for the 22nd Sunday of Pentecost in the C series. Will be preached on November the 9th, 2025. Luke 20, 27 to 38. Annihilation versus resurrection. Isn't this a provocative little scene that Luke writes for us today? A lot of sermons written based on this passage concerning what is heaven like? Or what should marriage be like? Most biblical commentators have little to say about the text. I suspect one or two things. Either they think it speaks for itself, or they're stumped by the apparent inclusion of what looks like an early version of the Snow White and Seven Dwarfs motif. Luke is brilliant as he reports the dialogue of the Sadducees and Jesus' use of death and marriage in the same encounter. A prominent woman in the community passed away. Her husband of 50 years requested that a recording of Wind Beneath My Wings be played in the service in honor of his wonderful wife. The pastor assigned his assistant to take care of this at the closing of the service. The assistant made a mistake. The psalm that came out was Under the Boardwalk. The Sadducees opened by trying to hook Jesus on a question concerning the law of Moses about marriage, childless widowhood, family responsibilities toward the widowed. If a woman's husband died before a male child was birthed out of their union, it was the brother of the husband's responsibility to marry the widow. Then the first son of the new marriage would be regarded as the dead man's child, and therefore the childless brother's line would not die out. As the story goes, because of this law, all 7 brothers would equally be her husband. So which one would be hers in the resurrection? I mean, why one and not the other 6? Based on a compassionate legal system developed to protect and feed widows, and wherein their brothers-in-law took care of them after their husbands died, the Sadducees think up this provocative question to try and stump Jesus. The odd thing is that the Sadducees believe in annihilation at death. No afterlife, no resurrection, no angels, no spirits, no nothing was not specifically mentioned in the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Torah. Why would they even care about resurrection? They don't believe in it. They believe you live, you quit living, that's it. You're annihilated. In asking their irrelevant question, they depreciate heaven, they depreciate the institution of marriage, they depreciate the very law that they live by for the social welfare of their people. They depreciate the reality of family tragedy and human grief. And all this from respected and established religious leaders of their day. What do you make of that? It helps to understand the Sadducees were completely in charge of the temple and the very lucrative sacrificial system in Jerusalem. It was a moneymaker. They disappear after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Before, they were rich aristocrats. They were not very well liked by the common people because they were always in collaboration with Rome during the time between the Maccabees and Jesus. They didn't like Jesus or the Pharisees, who were good rabbis for the most part, loved by the common folks, the working class and the merchant class. They would be the happiest guys in Jerusalem, and they could make the Roman pals happy too if they could get rid of Jesus and the Pharisees in one fell swoop. There's an annihilation. It's called weaponizing the justice system, actually. Make resurrection illegal, and the problems with Jesus and the Pharisees go away. The Sadducees have asked a question based on Moses. Jesus points out, based on that, they must believe in the resurrection. Moses is still active and alive in the law and the lives of the people. The question is an improbable theological conundrum. It is perfectly logical and horribly biased and uninformed. It's like the syllogism. Nobody is perfect. I am nobody. Therefore, I am perfect. We know that's not right. The Sadducees propose a complicated argument that's similar. A man can be legally married to 7 women. Not likely, probably not a good idea, but it's legal. A woman cannot be legally married to 7 men. Sadly, property rights over human beings enter this argument. However, a woman could possibly be widowed 7 times and therefore have 7 husbands serially, legally. If there was a resurrection, all husbands would arrive on the same stage at the same time, creating anarchy, legal chaos. Therefore, this legal precedent supports the fact there is no resurrection because resurrection is illegal. So, whose wife will she be in paradise? We still need to know. They don't even care. Jesus tells them to God, all are alive, always. And he's the God of the living. Jesus addresses the limitations we all live with. We know we're not permanent installations on this planet, and we wonder about death. Our faith says resurrection. The sadly faithless say annihilation. But everybody longs for continuation and worries about discontinuation. The limits of our mortality and the longings for immortality are deep-seated and historical. Ponce de Leon searched for the fountain of youth around St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest town in the United States. Coronado searched for immortal life in the 7 cities of gold, El Dorado, and he made it at least as far north as Lindsborg, Kansas, where just north of town, Spanish armor was discovered near a large sandstone hill, which is now named Coronado Heights. I would have thought finding Lindsborg would have been good enough. Who needs El Dorado? We have Paradise Lost, Shangri-La, Shambhala, Erewhon, which is nowhere backwards, Brave New World. And in this century, fearing annihilation, we've turned to biology. Cloning for spare parts, cryonics, get frozen before death until a cure can be found, stem cells, technological implants to extend life indefinitely in the odd movement called transhumanism. It's fascinating how we long desperately for life forever and are limited by real life daily. We chafe against our limits with our longings expressed in a variety of ways: annihilation versus resurrection. Hollywood and popular tales and books tell stories about the nature of the world beyond and angels and the demonic. People do want to know if this is all there really is: annihilation or resurrection. Bram Stoker died in 1912. Not a single one of his obituaries mentioned his classic story, Dracula. It was a story of a dark afterlife, of the so-called undead. The first movie about this was produced in 1922, a 94-minute silent film called Nosferatu. And since then, over 250 movies have been produced with the same theme. Yeah, people worry about this stuff. But our mortal limits are still our companions. They can even be instructive. An immense amount of pettiness is dropped if you catch a glimpse of the relative unlimited nature of human life. This today could be our last battle. That's not bad. That's not annihilation. Actually, there's no such thing as annihilation in the universe. Matter and energy change forms and positions constantly, eternally for all we know. But the Sadducees, terrified of limits, unable to imagine a future in God, resign themselves to annihilation. But the limit of death and the longing of resurrection are normative events in life. We, as Christians, acknowledge that by being baptized into Christ's death and resurrection. The limits of the Sadducees' doctrine was that they would not even consider resurrection. Meanwhile, they're still ironically asking the question, what happens when you die? Hey, if you're annihilated, what do you care? First problem with that question is in not even recognizing the daily deaths we all go through: alienation, despair, meaninglessness, pain, lack of direction. The question concerning marriage and the resurrection seeks to reduce life eternal to conditions of life now and work. Not much respect, actually, for the mystery of God here. It's just creating God in the image of our own limited experience. We all do that, and some do that kind of as a joke. I understand that Karl Barth, the great theologian, liked the music of Mozart, but he thought that the angels all played Bach when God was around, and Mozart the rest of the time. See, that's funny. But actually, Jesus does not give a theory of afterlife at all, other than God will take care of you, living or dead. Closest he comes to describing the kingdom of heaven, something like a marriage feast with dancing and laughter and wine and food and merriment, a big party, and you are the guest of honor. God has already raised us enough times. It should be obvious by now that we live because he is constantly recreating us in the resurrection. Annihilation, been annihilated. It's done. We're the resurrection people of God. Amen.